The fluorescent lights of Massachusetts General Hospital hummed their familiar tune as Dr. Marcus Whitfield strode through the cardiothoracic wing, his Italian leather shoes clicking against the polished floor. At 42, he had built an empire. 3 private practices across Boston, a reputation that made insurance companies tremble, and a surgical success rate that bordered on mythical. His net worth had crossed into 9 figures 2 years ago, thanks to patents on innovative surgical techniques and strategic investments in medical technology startups. But money couldn't buy what Marcus had lost along the way. "Dr. Whitfield, the Peterson case files are on your desk," his assistant Jennifer said, barely making eye contact as she hurried past. He always noticed, how people avoided his gaze, how conversations died when he entered the break room, how even veteran surgeons found excuses to review charts elsewhere when he appeared. The November rain pelted against the windows as Marcus entered his private office, a corner suite that overlooked the Charles River. The view cost the hospital a fortune, but they paid it gladly. His reputation brought in millions in wealthy patients and research grants. He was untouchable, unreachable, and entirely alone. Dr. Sarah Chen, the hospital's chief of staff, knocked on his open door. "Marcus, we need to discuss the Hayes situation. The malpractice allegation? It's baseless. My records are impeccable." His voice carried the temperature of a Boston winter. "It's not about the medicine," Sarah said carefully, stepping inside. "It's about bedside manner. The family claims you were dismissive, cruel even." Marcus's jaw tightened. "I told them the truth. Their father's condition was terminal. I don't traffic in false hope. There's a difference between honesty and coldness, Marcus." Sarah closed the door, her expression softening. "You're the best surgeon I've ever seen, but you're losing the human element. The board is concerned. The board can review my surgical outcomes. They have. They're perfect. You're perfect. That's the problem." Sarah paused, searching for words. "When did you last actually talk to a patient? Not at them. With them." Marcus turned to the window, watching rain streak down the glass. "Is there anything else?" Sarah sighed. "There's a new family medicine resident starting Monday. James Mitchell, single father, older student, came to medicine late. He'll be rotating through cardiology. Maybe you could mentor him." "I don't mentor. I know. That's why I'm asking you to try." After Sarah left, Marcus stood alone in his office, surrounded by diplomas, awards, and framed articles. "Boston's surgical genius," one headline proclaimed. Another, "The doctor with the golden hands." None mentioned that those hands hadn't held another person's in anything resembling comfort for 3 years, not since his wife, Rebecca, had walked out, unable to compete with his obsession with perfection. Monday morning arrived with the first real cold snap of the season. Marcus was reviewing surgical schedules when a knock interrupted him. "Dr. Whitfield, I'm James Mitchell. Dr. Chen said I'd be shadowing you this rotation." Marcus looked up to see a man in his late 30s, wearing slightly wrinkled scrubs and carrying a coffee mug that read "World's #1 Dad" in fading letters. James had kind eyes, the beginning of smile lines, and an earnestness that made Marcus immediately uncomfortable. "You're late. I'm actually 5 minutes early, but I can come back if—" "Don't waste time with semantics. Can you handle a 12-hour day?" "I'm a single dad with a 6-year-old daughter, Dr. Whitfield. I've been handling impossible schedules since she was born." Something in James's tone, not defiant, just factual, made Marcus pause. "Follow me. Try to keep up." They spent the morning on rounds, Marcus moving through patient rooms like a precisely programmed machine. He assessed conditions, adjusted medications, ordered tests, and moved on before patients could ask questions. James followed, taking notes but saying nothing. In Mrs. Rodriguez's room, Marcus reviewed her chart. "Your valve replacement is scheduled for Thursday. Standard procedure. Questions?" The elderly woman looked frightened. "Will it hurt, doctor?" "You'll be anesthetized. You won't feel anything during surgery." Marcus was already heading for the door. Doctor Whitfield? James's voice stopped him. May I? Marcus gestured impatiently. James approached Mrs. Rodriguez's bed, pulling up a chair. Mrs. Rodriguez, the first few days after surgery will be uncomfortable, James said gently. But the nurses here are excellent at managing pain. You'll have family with you? My daughter is flying in from California. That's wonderful. Having someone there really helps. And Dr. Whitfield? James glanced at Marcus with something that might have been challenge. He's the best. If I needed this surgery, I'd want him doing it. Mrs. Rodriguez's expression relaxed. Thank you, Doctor. In the hallway, Marcus walked faster. That was unnecessary. She was scared. Everyone's scared. I can't hold every patient's hand. I'm not suggesting you hold hands. Just acknowledge they're human beings facing mortality. Marcus stopped walking, turning to face James. Are you always this insubordinate with attending physicians? I'm not being insubordinate. I'm being honest. James met his gaze steadily. You asked Dr. Chen what you could improve. I'm telling you. I didn't ask. Marcus started, then stopped. He had asked, hadn't he? 3 months ago, after the Hayes complaint, in a moment of rare vulnerability. The afternoon brought an emergency consult. A 55-year-old man, Thomas Garrett, suffering from an aortic dissection. Severe, time-sensitive, requiring immediate surgery. Marcus assessed him quickly, noting the pallor, the rapid pulse, the fear in the man's eyes. Mr. Garrett, you have a tear in your aorta. Without surgery, you'll die within hours. With surgery, you have an 85% survival rate. I need your consent immediately. Thomas's hand shook as he tried to hold the pen. My kids. I have 3 kids. They're young. I need to call them. There's no time. 5 minutes, please, just 5. Mr. Garrett, every minute decreases your odds. Marcus, James's voice was quiet but firm. 5 minutes won't make the difference. Let him call his kids. Marcus felt something crack inside his carefully constructed walls. He looked at Thomas Garrett, really looked, and saw not just a failing aorta but a father terrified of leaving his children. He saw himself alone in his office, surrounded by success and emptiness. 5 minutes, Marcus said, his voice rougher than usual. I'll have the OR prepped. In the hallway, James caught up with him. Thank you. Don't thank me for basic decency. But that's just it, Dr. Whitfield. For you, that was huge. Marcus wanted to snap back, to reassert his authority. Instead, he found himself asking, how do you do it? Balance everything. I don't balance it. I survive it. Some days I'm a terrible doctor because I'm worried about Emma. Some days I'm a terrible father because I'm exhausted from rounds. But I show up, and I try, and I remember why I started this. And why did you start? James smiled sadly. My wife died from breast cancer when Emma was 2. Her oncologist, Dr. Patricia Walsh, she sat with us for hours, explained everything, held my hand when I cried, and never once made me feel like I was just another case number. She gave us dignity in the worst moment of our lives. I wanted to be that for someone else. Marcus felt the weight of those words settle in his chest. Thomas Garrett survived the surgery. As Marcus sutured the final layers, his hands as steady and precise as ever, he found himself thinking about those 3 kids waiting for their father, about Emma Mitchell waiting for James to come home, about the hospital full of people who avoided him because he'd forgotten they existed. When he finally left the OR, James was waiting with coffee. Thought you might need this. Black, no sugar, Jennifer told me. Marcus accepted the cup, their fingers briefly touching. The surgery went well. He'll make a full recovery. I knew he would. You're brilliant at what you do, but not at being human. Being human is harder than being brilliant, James said softly. Takes more courage. Marcus looked at this quiet, single father who'd somehow managed to speak up when no one else would, who'd challenged him without cruelty, who'd shown him what he'd lost without making him feel condemned. This rotation is supposed to last 6 weeks, Marcus said. That's the schedule. I want you to stay the full term, and I want you to keep doing what you did today, challenging you, reminding me. Marcus took a sip of coffee, grimacing slightly at the bitterness. People used to call me compassionate, before everything became about achievement, before I built walls so high I couldn't see over them anymore. James smiled. Then maybe over the next 6 weeks, we can work on that. As they walked toward the elevators, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in years, the faint, uncomfortable, necessary stirring of hope. Outside, the rain had stopped, and through the windows he could see the first stars appearing over Boston. Maybe being untouchable wasn't the achievement he'd thought it was. Maybe being reached was the harder, braver thing. 3 weeks into James's rotation, Massachusetts General Hospital's cardiology department had become a different place. Not obviously, the surgeries still ran with clockwork precision, the success rates remained exemplary, but something subtle had shifted, like the change in air pressure before a storm breaks. Doctor Marcus Whitfield found himself arriving 15 minutes early to pre-op consultations. He discovered that he could deliver devastating diagnoses without delivering them devastatingly. And he learned that sometimes the most efficient medicine included an extra 2 minutes to answer the question beneath the question. But change, Marcus was discovering, came with a price. Dr. Whitfield, your schedule is backing up, Jennifer said, catching him in the hallway after he'd spent 20 minutes explaining a bypass procedure to an elderly patient and her daughter. You have 6 more consults before noon. Reschedule 2 for this afternoon. Jennifer blinked. But you never. Jennifer, when's the last time I asked about your mother? She was starting chemotherapy in October. His assistant's expression shifted through several emotions before landing on something like surprise. She's responding well. Thank you for asking. After she left, Marcus felt James's presence behind him. That was good. That was exhausting, Marcus admitted, leaning against the wall. How do you do this every day? Care this much? Who says it gets easier? James smiled, the expression tinged with weariness. They'd fallen into a rhythm over the past weeks. Early morning coffee before rounds, lunches grabbed between surgeries, where James shared stories about Emma's kindergarten adventures. Late evenings, reviewing cases where Marcus gradually opened up about the marriage that had crumbled under the weight of his ambition. December had brought snow to Boston, blanketing the city in white that quickly turned grey with city grime. Marcus watched the weather change from his office window, aware that he was watching the world more now, participating in it, rather than simply moving through it. Emma's school play is Friday, James mentioned during their afternoon coffee. She's playing a reindeer in the Christmas pageant. That sounds important. It is to her, but I'm scheduled for a double shift. My ex's mother was supposed to swap weekends, but she cancelled. Marcus heard the quiet desperation beneath James's casual tone. He understood it now, that constant juggling act, the guilt of choosing between professional duty and personal love, the exhaustion of trying to be enough for everyone. I can cover your shift. James looked up sharply. Marcus, you don't do general medicine. You're a surgeon. I have an MD. I'm capable of handling overnight monitoring and basic interventions. Go see your daughter be a reindeer. I can't ask you to do that. You didn't ask. I offered. Marcus turned from the window, meeting James's gaze. You've spent 3 weeks teaching me how to be human again. Let me practice. James's eyes shimmered slightly. Thank you. That means more than you know. Friday evening, Marcus found himself in unfamiliar territory, the general medicine ward, handling overnight supervision. Dr. Sarah Chen had nearly fallen over when he'd volunteered, but she'd approved it quickly before he could change his mind. Dr. Whitfield? A young nurse approached hesitantly. Mr. Patterson in 412 is complaining of chest pain. Marcus felt the familiar surge of adrenaline, the clinical mind engaging. But now, as he entered room 412, he also felt something else, a recognition that the frightened man in the bed wasn't just a medical puzzle to solve. Mr. Patterson, I'm Dr. Whitfield. Tell me about this pain. 2 hours later, after ruling out cardiac issues and determining severe acid reflux, Marcus sat at the nurses' station writing orders. The night shift nurses watched him warily, unused to having the hospital's most famous surgeon working alongside them. "Can I ask you something, Dr. Whitfield?" The head nurse, Rita, a woman in her 50s with 30 years at Mass General, approached him carefully. "Go ahead. What happened to you? 3 weeks ago, you barely acknowledged we existed. Now you're covering overnight medicine shifts and asking patients about their grandchildren." Marcus set down his pen. "Someone reminded me why I became a doctor in the first place." "Dr. Mitchell? How did you—" "Honey, everyone's noticed. The way you two work together, the way he's not afraid of you like the rest of us, the way you actually smile now when he's around." Rita's expression softened. "Whatever he's doing, I hope he keeps doing it." Marcus felt heat rise in his face, an unfamiliar sensation. "He's teaching me to be better. Is that all he's doing?" The question hung in the air, loaded with implications Marcus hadn't let himself examine. His friendship with James had become the brightest part of his days. He looked forward to their morning coffees, lingered in conversations, found excuses to request James's assistance in surgeries. When James laughed, something in Marcus's chest loosened. When James talked about Emma, Marcus felt vicarious joy. Was it friendship or something more complicated? "I don't know," Marcus admitted quietly. Rita patted his shoulder. "Figure it out. Life's too short to live in that cold office of yours." Saturday morning, James arrived at the hospital radiating happiness. "She was perfect, Marcus. Emma stole the show. All the other reindeer forgot their lines, but she just kept going, improvising. She got a standing ovation. I'm glad you were there." "I wouldn't have been without you." James handed him a coffee. "Emma drew you a picture to say thank you." Marcus unfolded the construction paper to find a crayon drawing of 3 stick figures, one tall with glasses, labeled Dr. Marcus, one medium-sized, labeled Daddy, and one small with antlers, labeled Me. They were holding hands under a smiling sun. Something cracked in Marcus's chest. "She drew me. She wanted to thank the doctor who let her daddy come to her play. She asked if you could come to our Christmas Eve dinner." "James, I couldn't impose." "You wouldn't be imposing. We'd love to have you. It's just going to be me, Emma, and way too much lasagna. My cooking skills are limited." James paused, suddenly uncertain. "Unless you have other plans." Marcus thought of his usual Christmas Eve, alone in his Beacon Hill brownstone, reviewing medical journals, ignoring the holiday entirely. "I don't have plans." "Then come, please. Emma's already set a 3rd place at the table. I don't know how to be around children. Emma's easy. Just be yourself, the self you're becoming, not the self you were." That afternoon brought an emergency that tested everything Marcus had been learning. A car accident victim, a 32-year-old woman named Lisa Chen, Dr. Sarah Chen's niece, arrived with catastrophic cardiac trauma. The kind of injury that required immediate surgery and offered maybe a 50% survival chance, even with perfect execution. Marcus prepped quickly, James assisting. In the OR, surrounded by the familiar sterile environment, Marcus felt the old coldness trying to reassert itself. This was where he was most comfortable, detached, clinical, focused solely on the technical challenge. But as he made the first incision, he thought about Sarah waiting outside, about Lisa's family gathering in the surgical waiting room, about the difference between treating a damaged heart and treating a person who had a damaged heart. "Talk to me about her," Marcus said suddenly. James looked up from the instruments. "What?" "Lisa Chen. Tell me about her. Not her medical history. Her." James glanced at the nurses, who looked equally surprised. "She's a landscape architect, designing a public garden in Cambridge. Sarah says she spent last Christmas volunteering at a homeless shelter. She has a cat named Picasso, and she's terrible at karaoke but loves it anyway." Marcus worked steadily, his hands moving with the precision that had made him famous. But now, As he repaired the damaged ventricle, he wasn't just fixing tissue. He was saving someone's daughter, someone's friend, someone who loved karaoke and designed gardens and had people waiting for her to come home. "She's going to make it," Marcus said 3 hours later, completing the final sutures. "The repair is solid. She'll need months of recovery, but she's going to make it." The OR erupted in quiet celebration. The surgical team actually smiled, actually acknowledged the victory as a team rather than as the inevitable result of Marcus Whitfield's skill. In the scrub room, James helped him remove his surgical gown. That was different. I was different. You were present. Not just technically, but emotionally. You saved her life, Marcus. We saved her life. I'm starting to understand the difference. They stood close in the small scrub room, and Marcus felt the weight of Rita's question from the night before. James's presence had become essential to him, not just professionally, but personally. The thought of this rotation ending, of losing their daily connection, felt unbearable. "James, Marcus started, then stopped, uncertain how to articulate the confusion of feelings. "Yeah," James said softly. "Me too." They held each other's gaze for a long moment before the door opened and Sarah Chen appeared, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered, embracing Marcus, the first time anyone had hugged him in years. "Thank you for saving her." Marcus's arms came up awkwardly, then more naturally returning the embrace. Over Sarah's shoulder, he met James's eyes and saw approval, warmth, and something that looked remarkably like pride. Later that evening, Marcus stood in his office overlooking the city. Boston's Christmas lights twinkled below, the Charles River a dark ribbon through the illuminated landscape. His phone buzzed with a text from James. "Emma wants to know if you like lasagna. Very important question, apparently." Marcus smiled, a real smile, the kind that reached his eyes. He typed back, "I love lasagna. Tell Emma I can't wait." As he looked at his reflection in the window, Marcus barely recognized himself. The cold, untouchable surgeon was still there, but something warmer was emerging. Someone capable of connection, vulnerability, hope. Someone breaking through his own walls, piece by piece, with the help of a quiet, single dad who'd been brave enough to speak up. Christmas Eve arrived with fresh snow, blanketing Boston in white that stayed pristine for nearly an hour before city life muddied it. Marcus stood outside James's modest apartment in Jamaica Plain, holding an expensive bottle of wine in one hand and a wrapped present for Emma in the other, feeling more nervous than before any surgery. This wasn't his world. The triple-decker building with its peeling paint and mismatched Christmas decorations, the sound of families celebrating in adjacent units, the normal chaos of ordinary lives. His Beacon Hill brownstone was silent, elegant, empty. This building was noisy, cramped, alive. He knocked, and Emma answered the door, a tiny girl with James's kind eyes and untamed dark curls, wearing a sparkly dress and reindeer antlers. "Your doctor, Marcus. Daddy said you're really tall, and you are." She grabbed his hand with absolute confidence. "Come see our tree. We made all the ornaments ourselves, because Daddy says handmade is more special than store-bought." James appeared from the kitchen, wearing a flour-dusted apron and looking flustered. "Emma, give Dr. Whitfield a chance to actually come inside. Sorry, she's been waiting by the door for 20 minutes. "It's fine," Marcus said, surprised to find he meant it. The apartment was small but warm, decorated with Emma's artwork and photographs. The Christmas tree was indeed covered in handmade ornaments, construction paper snowflakes, painted pine cones, photos glued to cardboard stars. "I brought this for Emma," Marcus said, handing over the wrapped box. Emma tore into it with 6-year-old enthusiasm, revealing a high-quality telescope. "Wow! Is this for looking at stars?" "It is. Your dad mentioned you were interested in astronomy. I want to be an astronaut, or a veterinarian, or maybe both." Emma hugged the telescope, then without warning hugged Marcus's legs. "Thank you, Dr. Marcus." Marcus stood frozen, then carefully patted her head. Over Emma's curls, he met James's gaze and saw something soft and wonderful in his expression. Dinner was cheerfully chaotic. The lasagna was slightly burned on the edges, but delicious. Emma talked non-stop about school, her friends, her plans to train her fish, named Dr. Bubbles, to do tricks. James watched her with infinite patience, cutting her food, wiping sauce from her chin, radiating the kind of love that Marcus had forgotten existed. "So, Dr. Marcus," Emma said seriously, "Daddy says you're the best heart doctor in the world. Can you fix any heart?" "I try my best. Even broken hearts, like when people are sad." Marcus felt the question pierce through him. "Those are different kind of broken, harder to fix. Daddy had a broken heart when Mommy died, but he says time and love fixed it." Emma looked at James with absolute trust. "Do you have someone to love you when you're sad?" "Emma," James said gently, "that's a pretty personal question." "It's okay," Marcus said quietly. "No, Emma, I don't have anyone. That's sad. Everyone should have someone." She reached across the table to pat his hand. "But you have us now, right, Daddy?" James's eyes met Marcus's across the table. "Right, sweetheart." After dinner, Emma insisted on showing Marcus her room, a tiny space made magical with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling, more artwork, and a bookshelf crammed with picture books. "Daddy reads to me every night, even when he's really tired from the hospital," Emma confided, showing him her current favorite about a mouse who wanted to go to the moon. "He does all the voices. It's really funny. Your dad is pretty special." "I know." Emma climbed onto her bed, yawning despite her earlier energy. "Are you going to be Daddy's friend forever?" "I'd like to be." "Good. Daddy needs more friends. He's always taking care of everyone else, but nobody takes care of him." The observation from a 6-year-old child struck Marcus with its accuracy. He'd been so focused on his own transformation that he hadn't fully recognized what James sacrificed daily: his time, his energy, his own needs for everyone around him. James appeared in the doorway. "Time for bed, kiddo. Say goodnight to Dr. Marcus. Can Dr. Marcus read me a story? Please." James started to object, but Marcus found himself saying, "I'd be honored." 20 minutes later, having stumbled through the mouse's adventures with considerably less theatrical flair than James would have provided, Marcus emerged to find James cleaning up the kitchen. "You didn't have to do that," James said. "I wanted to. She's remarkable, James. She's my whole world." James dried his hands on a dish towel, then gestured to the small balcony. "Want some air?" Outside, the city sparkled with Christmas lights. They stood side by side, breath clouding in the cold, the sounds of celebration drifting up from surrounding apartments. "This is probably the best Christmas Eve I've had in 10 years, Marcus admitted. "Really? I figured you'd have fancy parties. Important people?" "I had obligations, not joy. There's a difference." Marcus turned to look at James. "You've changed my life, you know, these past weeks. Changed how I practice medicine, how I see the world, how I see myself." You did the changing, Marcus. I just reminded you who you already were." "Who I could be," Marcus corrected. "Who I want to be." They stood close in the small space, and Marcus felt the same electricity he'd been trying to ignore for weeks. The way his pulse quickened when James smiled, the way he found excuses to stand near him, the way Emma's drawing of the three of them holding hands felt less like fantasy and more like hope. "James, I need to tell you something." "Okay. I'm not good at this. Vulnerability, connection. I built walls for years because it felt safer than risking rejection. But you walked right through those walls like they didn't exist. And now Marcus struggled for words. "I don't think of you as just a colleague, or even just a friend." James's expression shifted, surprise mixing with something that looked like relief. "Marcus, let me finish, please. I know this complicates everything. Your rotation, our professional relationship, the fact that I'm your attending physician. I know I should keep this to myself, but I also know that Emma's right. Everyone should have someone. And I'd like to explore if we could be that for each other." The silence stretched long enough for Marcus to regret every word. Then James smiled, slow and warm. "Do you know what Emma asked me last week? She asked if I liked you the way princesses like princes in her storybooks. I told her that was complicated. But the truth is, it's not complicated at all. I've been falling for you since the day you let Thomas Garrett call his kids, maybe even before that, when I saw the loneliness underneath all that perfection. So, this is mutual? Marcus, I've been waiting for you to catch up." James moved closer, close enough that Marcus could feel his warmth in the cold air. "My rotation ends in 3 weeks. Then we won't have the ethical complication of attending resident dynamics. If you can wait 3 weeks, I'd really like to see where this goes." "I can wait. I've waited this long to feel something real. 3 weeks is nothing." James laughed softly. "For someone who was supposedly cold and unapproachable, you're pretty romantic. I'm discovering all kinds of things about myself lately." They stood together on the balcony, not touching but connected, as snow began to fall again over Boston. Inside, Emma was safely asleep. Below, the city celebrated, and between them something new and fragile was beginning. 3 weeks later, Marcus found himself in Dr. Sarah Chen's office for what he expected to be a routine check-in. Instead, he found her sitting with the hospital's chief of surgery, Dr. Robert Mendez, both wearing serious expressions. "Marcus, sit down," Sarah said. His stomach tightened. "What's wrong?" "We've had a complaint filed," Robert said carefully. "An anonymous complaint suggesting an inappropriate relationship between you and Dr. Mitchell." Marcus felt his blood run cold. "We've been completely professional. There's been no—" "We know that," Sarah interrupted. "We reviewed the security footage, talked to staff. Everything has been above board. But the complaint forced us to investigate, and during that investigation, we noticed something else." "What?" Sarah smiled. "Your patient satisfaction scores have increased by 40%. Your staff retention has improved. Nurses actually volunteer to work your surgeries now. Whatever is happening between you and James, and I'm not asking for details, it's made you a better doctor, a better person. So the complaint? Dismissed as unfounded. But Marcus, you need to be careful. If you and James are going to pursue a relationship, you can't have him working under your supervision. We'll need to reassign him to a different attending for any future rotations." "That's fair. More than fair. And Marcus," Robert leaned forward, "for what it's worth, I'm happy for you. You've been alone too long." James was waiting in the hallway when Marcus emerged. "Everything okay? Someone filed a complaint about us. It was dismissed, but they know. Are you okay with that? With people knowing?" Marcus considered the question. 6 months ago, he would have been horrified at the thought of his personal life becoming hospital gossip. Now, standing with James in the crowded hallway, he found he didn't care. "I'm more than okay with it. Your rotation officially ended yesterday, which means—" Marcus took a breath, aware of nearby staff slowing to listen. "I can finally ask you on a proper date without any ethical violations." James grinned. "Dr. Whitfield, are you asking me out in the middle of the hospital?" "I am. Dinner tomorrow night. Somewhere nice. Emma can stay with my housekeeper. She's been pestering me to meet the child who's apparently reformed me." "Reformed you?" Rita's words, not mine. "So? Will you?" "Yes. Absolutely yes." They stood smiling at each other like idiots while hospital staff walked past, some openly staring, others pretending not to notice. Marcus couldn't remember the last time he'd felt this exposed and this happy simultaneously. "Dr. Whitfield," a familiar voice interrupted. Mrs. Rodriguez, the patient from James's first day, was being wheeled past in a wheelchair, her daughter pushing. "I heard you and Dr. Mitchell are friends. I wanted to say thank you, both of you. You saved my life, but more than that, you made me feel like my life mattered." "It does matter," Marcus said, the words coming naturally now. "Every life matters." After she left, James touched his arm lightly. See? This is who you were always meant to be. No, Marcus corrected. This is who I needed, someone brave enough to help me become. 6 months later, on a warm June evening, Marcus stood in his carefully renovated brownstone, a home that now had Emma's drawings on the refrigerator, James's medical textbooks scattered on the coffee table, and photographs of the three of them covering surfaces that had once held only awards and accolades. The renovation had been James's idea. If we're going to make this work, really work, we need this to feel like a home, not a museum. Emma burst through the door first, having finally mastered the key Marcus had given her. Dr. Marcus, guess what? I got an A on my space project. That's wonderful. Did you use the telescope? Obviously. She rolled her eyes with 6-year-old exasperation. Can we look at Saturn tonight? Please. After dinner. I made that pasta you like. James appeared behind her carrying groceries. You made dinner? I'm impressed. Don't be too impressed. I followed your recipe exactly. There's a significant chance I still messed it up. But he hadn't. The meal was good, not perfect, but made with care, shared with people he loved. After Emma went to bed, in the room they'd converted just for her, Marcus and James sat on the back patio, watching fireflies in the garden. I have something to tell you, James said quietly. I got accepted into the Cardiothoracic Fellowship. At Mass General. If I take it, I'll be staying in Boston for at least 3 more years. If you take it, James, that's incredible. It's competitive. I know, but it means more years of brutal hours, more time away from Emma, more sacrifices. I need to know we can handle it, that this, he gestured between them, is strong enough. Marcus took James's hand, threading their fingers together. 3 months ago, I was alone in my office, convinced that isolation was the price of excellence. Now I come home to you and Emma, and I'm a better surgeon because of it, not despite it. If you want this fellowship, we'll figure it out. Together. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. Marcus pulled James closer. You spoke up when everyone else was silent. You saw past my walls when everyone else kept their distance. You taught me that being brilliant means nothing if you're alone. So yes, I'm sure. James kissed him, soft and certain, as the Boston summer evening wrapped around them. Dr. Marcus? Emma's voice came from the doorway. I can't sleep. Can we look at Saturn now? They set up the telescope on the patio, Emma between them, all three peering at the distant planet with its impossible rings. Marcus thought about distance. How far away Saturn seemed, how unreachable. Yet here it was, visible, touchable through the right instrument. That's what James had been for him. The instrument that made the unreachable possible. The person who'd helped him see that the cold, brilliant, isolated life he'd built wasn't excellence. It was imprisonment. Make a wish, Dr. Marcus, Emma whispered, her eye still pressed to the telescope. I don't need to wish, Marcus said, looking at James across Emma's head, seeing understanding and love reflected back. I have everything I need right here. The city continued its endless rhythm around them, ambulances wailing, trains rumbling, millions of lives intersecting and diverging in the complicated dance of urban existence. But on this patio, in this moment, 3 people who'd been separate were finally, beautifully, irreversibly together. Marcus had spent years believing that perfection meant being untouchable. Now he understood the truth. Being touched, being reached, being vulnerable enough to let others in, that was the real achievement. The one that mattered. The one that made all the brilliant surgeries and prestigious awards pale in comparison. He'd been avoided by colleagues, feared by staff, isolated by his own design, until a quiet single dad had finally spoken up, reached out, and reminded him what it meant to be human. And in doing so, had saved the one heart Marcus had never learned to fix, his own.